Hello guys, in this part we will clean up our code, so let's start. As you can see here in business hours page, if we set a value of, for example, and click save, we will receive this error. And the reason behind that, if we go here to our business hour controller and die and dump here data, right, and refresh, you notice here the first one has of value, right, and then the others has no of value, because also we use upsert says if you pass a array of arrays here, we must have the same number of keys, right? So all of them must have the same number of keys. So let's start by creating a new request here, php artisan make business or request here, business hour request business hours request, and I will use it here in our update method, business hour request, and here I will set it to true, and I want to format request before passing it to rules, right? So first of all we need to business hours array, right? It will be array and its size must be 7, right? And then business hour, the elements will be dot name, for example, must be request or required, right? Index, so we must add asterisk here, and for other values also, let's check it from here, for from, right, and 2, and both of them are times, so we must say here for both of them, this one and this one, required, and also date format must be HIS as it passed here, right? And also step required, right? Let's set it to 2, and it must be integer, and the minimum value must be 1, right? Last thing here for of, it must also be required, right, and will be boolean. Let's remove it, right? And before validation we will say here function prepare for validation method, right? And we will die and dump here our request, this all, to see what will happen here. Back again, refresh our page, send the request, and it returns our data, as you can see here, and here is our days, right, without formatted. So we will format it here by using the same method, right? And here I will say this one data, and instead of request, because now we are in the form request, we will use this, and let's die and dump it again, data here, refresh, and it works fine. Now we need to check. Let's back here, and I will set it to off and save. If the array has off, I will keep it. If not, I will set it automatically to false, right? So here I will say for each data as day, right? And I will say here for this, even for index and day, let's say undump index and day here, and refresh again, it returns 0, right? For passing array, I will say here if not a set day, right? And also off, I will say here data dot index of will be false, right? Now let's die and dump our data again, data, and refresh, and now this has already off true, and this now has false, and other false, right? But here is string, it's false. Let's see it if it affects or not. And now I will say here instead of business hour we can use actually data directly, data, right? And I will say here this replace our request, here data will be this data, right? We will change the format of request, back and refresh again, and now I think it works. Send off, save, back to our database again. It didn't work. Let's check the problem. Now I think we must use it inside our business hour controller. Yeah, so here I will say request validated, right? Back and check again, refresh, set the first day off or Sunday off, save, back to our database. It doesn't work, and the reason behind that, we must set the day, not name, right? Now let's refresh, set it off, save again. Here I added this method quickly to check the validation errors, right? And when I refresh, as I expected here, our off value must be true or false, not string, right? So we will say here if has and continue, right? If not has, off, set off to false and continue, but if it has, we will say off here will equal to, right, of data index of. These two symbols convert the value to boolean, and if I refresh again, now it works fine. Let's remove it and save. It works. Let's set, for example, Monday and Tuesday off. Also works fine. Back to our database and check. Monday and Tuesday are off, right? The second improvement we want to do here for appointments. If you notice, today is Saturday, right? And now time is, as I can see, artisan tinker, and I will say now here it 13, right? But here on Saturday it displays the previous hours, right? So we need also to add a check here for previous, the current and next or the future hours. So back here again to our business hour controller or model, right, from here, and instead of using time period, this method returns all of them directly. I will say here inside array map function, let's cut it here or even continue function, and for time we will add some logics here, right, and semicolon, and I will say this one, as you can see now, we inside our business day or business hour we will check for day. We will say here if today, right, if this day equal to today, L or format, right, and also we will check if, or sorry, and here and the time, this one, instead of using hi directly, is past, right, not in the past, for today only, then return this date format, right? But if it's not equal to today, right, this one here for other days or for the future days, not equal to today, we will return all of them directly, right? So back here, and as you can see, time now is 13:28, so it must start from 13:30, right? And when I refresh the page now, as you can see, it works correctly, right? Also we need to get rid of these values. If we back here to our controller, right, inside appointment controller, let's close it, and if I die and dump here these hours, right, die hours, because it uses these values from time period from here, this from this attribute, refresh, now it returns null. So if you want to get rid of null directly, you can use here this one, array filter, right? use here array filter, and array filter remove all false values. Array filter, back and refresh. Now it works fine. Let's check the time now, and after 1 minute this 1330 will be disappeared. Another improvement we need to add also here, displaying all business hours and disable the reserved appointments. So let's back here, and I will say now we returns all business hours, and if you noticed we return only available hours. So instead of that, what if we need to do something like that, right? I will return business hours, right? Business hours, and I will say hours, and also I will return the current appointment, reserved hours for that day, and current appointments, right? Refresh. As I said here 1330 disappeared, and let's continue on it now. Back again to our reserved blade, right? And here I will say inside the second for each here, instead of checking available hours or looping around available hours, I will loop around here business hours, right? Let's spread our screen, and I will show it here inside appointment controller, right? I will use these values to check, right? Here also I will use available hours, sorry, reserved hours and business hours, right? So I will check here business hours. Let's close it here for business hours, and I will say if here and else and end if. I will say if not an array of reserved hours, this time, right, in appointment, if not reserved, if not in this array, right, then display it here. Let's add it quickly, then display the form here, and if it inside the reserved array of it's already reserved, show the disabled button here after else, and remove it here, and I will say disabled, back again and refresh, sorry, at else, refresh, and now all are available. What if I reserve it this, for example, right? I need to log in. I will log in quickly, and as you can see here now these 14 are disabled because it's already reserved, right? Back to our database and inside appointments, and it's reserved on that day. Let's select another day, on Wednesday for example, 10 half past, created, back, and it's disabled. Even if we are click here, if not work, right? I think it's a good solution also. Now let's validate this reservation process, right? Because if you notice here, right, all of them are inside our HTML elements, and it may be manipulated like that, right? Instead of date and time, maybe it's a bad practice. So we need also to validate these two values, and let's create another form request, artisan request here, and I will send this time appointment request, right? And back to our code, inside here appointment controller again, and now inside here appointment request, back here, and I will say true, and here let's check these values, right? Inspect the element for that, for example, and its name is date and time, right? So here we will receive date, and its date format will be YMD, this format here, ymd, and it's also required here quickly, required, and the same thing for time also, right? We will change the time, and its format will be hi. But before validation also, we need to check if that day is not off and the time is between from and 2 hours, and also this time not reserved on that day. So we will say here format or prepare for validation function prepare for validation, right? And let's die and dump this all here, back and refresh again, select this one. As you can see, on January 11 at 9, right? So let's create a quick function here, function maybe private, right, and is valid, this one here, and I will say here date, or even we can use it directly, this one day, name of the day, I will say here request or this date method to convert it to carbon, and I will say this date, right, this one here, and I will call this function also this is valid, right, and I will die and dump here day name. I want to return the day name, and also format will be L, back and refresh again, it's null, back again refresh, it's date, right, we may use dd this input date to check the value, and it returns the date. Yeah, instead of that we can use this input date here. Now refresh again. Yeah, for this method it takes the key actually, so here our key is date, right, and format will be L, refresh again, now it works, Wednesday. So we will check the business hour of Wednesday. We will say here business hours, so equal to here business hour day or where day equal to this day name first, right, die and dump business hours, refresh, it returns business hours on Wednesday, and also we need to return time period as here time period as array. Now refresh again, and it returns all time periods inside or for Wednesday, right, and we will check if here not in array the time request or this input time, right, if it's not inside this business hours, and I will say here port here port 22 invalid date or invalid time. If not, we will say or die and dump again the day name, refresh again, and it works correctly, back again here. What if we try to manipulate this value, right, instead of this one here 9 maybe, or even 9 half past here, I will say it for 7, right, or 8, the date not in the range of that here, and I will select this here, and it throws invalid time. Now it works correctly and perfectly. Here is the first check, the time is correct and the date also is correct, and I will check also that time is between and I want to also check that time is not already reserved, right? So here also I will say like appointments here, this one, right? The same code, and here I will say date, and now we have our request, actually request, or this input date, right? And also where time equal to this input time exists, it returns true or false. And here let's call our class appointment model, and we will say is already exists, right here. And if exists, we will throw the same error, right? And here if already exists, we will throw the same error, already taken. Back again and refresh. Let's select a time, maybe this one here again, and I will say here at 10:30, right? And select it again, and already taken, right? And in the final it will return true, or even without returning anything, because it throws exceptions, right? So back here to our appointment controller, and I will here die and dump request validated data, and back again select a valid date, right? Now our date is January 11 and time is at 10 o'clock, and let's die and dump our data here, dd data. Now all works fine. Back and save, and now it's created, right? And let's clean our code itself, right? So the first thing I want to clean here, this method, I will create a service, maybe inside our app here. I will say app, right, and create folder or file services, and I will say, for example, appointment service.php, and here our class g here to generate a namespace, and I will say class here the same name. And for this part, right, I will say here generate time data function, generate time data, and I will say here, let's cut all of code here. Here I will call classes, right, to keep our controller clean. And also for date, I will say here carbon date, and inside controller here appointments equal to here new appointment services, and generate time, and I will say here date. Back again, and instead of that I will return this array directly, return. So let's test the code as a reserve, and it works fine, right? And so here I converted, or I cleaned my controller by creating this class for generating this method, right? Yeah, that's it guys. You may add some features on that, like maybe adding middlewares, adding policies, creating admins, adding authentication middleware for necessary routes, and so on. Here is the idea of appointment system. If you found it useful, support me by clicking on like, share, and subscribe. See you in next videos.